It was the summer of 2016. Michael, a 28-year-old from Illinois, had been dreaming of one thing for years: a full cross-country road trip to California, along the legendary Route 66. He wanted the classic American experience: roadside diners glowing in neon, kitschy gas stations, and motels straight out of postcards from the 1950s. For the first few days, everything went as planned. He blasted music, stopped at quirky tourist traps, and soaked in the freedom of the open road. But by the time he crossed into Arizona, the mood had changed. Night had already swallowed the desert whole. The two-lane highway stretched endlessly in front of him, a ribbon of cracked asphalt vanishing into nothingness. The stars were hidden behind thick clouds, and the desert felt colder than it should in midsummer. Michael twisted the radio dial, but the music dissolved into static. He tried his GPS, but the screen flickered, buzzed, then went completely dark. Alone in the middle of nowhere, the only sound left was the steady hum of his engine. The further he drove, the heavier the silence became. No other cars, no cell signal, just the desert pressing in on him from both sides, vast and merciless. His eyelids grew heavy, and he thought about pulling over to sleep in the car, but a deep unease gnawed at him. Out here, stopping felt dangerous. Then, just as his mind began to drift, he saw it. In the distance, through the wavering curtain of desert heat and low-lying fog, a neon sign flickered weakly. The letters buzzed, sputtered, and came into focus: Moonlight Motel, Vacancy. The glow cut through the darkness, like a trap disguised as a beacon. Michael exhaled, part relief and part suspicion. He told himself it was exactly what he needed: a warm bed, maybe a vending machine snack, and a chance to reset before pushing on to California. But deep down, something about that flickering sign didn't feel right. Still, tired and desperate, he turned the wheel toward the exit ramp, unaware that this single choice would mark the beginning of the most terrifying night of his life.
The Moonlight Motel looked more like a ruin than a place to sleep. The paint on the outer walls had peeled in strips, exposing grey concrete like bones. A soda machine leaned against the side of the building, its glass cracked, its buttons worn blank from age. Out in the lot, old cars sat abandoned, rusted shells from decades ago, their tires long gone, their frames eaten by dust and time. Michael hesitated. For a moment he thought about turning back, finding somewhere else. But the exhaustion in his bones was stronger. He parked his car in the corner, cut the engine, and the silence pressed in. The desert at night was colder than he expected, the kind of chill that crawls under your skin and stays there. He made his way to the lobby. The glass door moaned when he pushed it open. Inside, the air was thick with mildew, sour with old cigarette smoke. The carpet squished faintly under his shoes, damp in places where no moisture should be. Behind the desk sat a pale, elderly man. His skin had a waxy sheen, his lips stretched into a stiff, unnatural smile. His eyes, grey and cloudy, followed Michael with unsettling sharpness. "One night?" the man asked, his voice low, gravelly, like sand grinding in his throat. Michael nodded. "Yeah, just one." The old man ducked beneath the counter. When he returned, he placed a brass key on the desk, heavy, tarnished, dangling from a long fob you'd expect to see in the 1950s. Michael frowned at it. No credit card swipe, no receipt, just the key. "Room 6, the man said, his bony finger pointing down a dim hallway. Michael picked up the key. The metal was freezing cold, like it had just been pulled from ice. He turned to go, but the man spoke again. Softer now, but heavier somehow. "Don't leave your room after midnight." A long pause hung in the air. "No matter what you hear." Michael blinked. "Excuse me?" But the old man said nothing more. His eyes remained fixed on Michael, unblinking, his lips frozen in that strange half-smile. Michael let out a nervous laugh. "Got it. I'll keep that in mind," he told himself. It was just some creepy gimmick, a ghost story for travelers. something to make the place memorable. But as he turned toward the hallway, the old man's eyes stayed on him until he disappeared into the shadows. Room 6 looked like it hadn't been touched in years. The wallpaper peeled at the corners. The curtains smelled faintly of mold. The bedspread was faded and thin, with cigarette burns along the edges. The air was stale, a heavy mix of dust, mildew, and something else Michael couldn't name. Still, he was too tired to care. He tossed his bag on the chair and collapsed onto the bed. The springs groaned under his weight. Within minutes, his exhaustion pulled him into uneasy sleep. But at 12:17 a.m., something woke him, a sound, soft footsteps, slow and deliberate, just outside his door. Michael's eyes snapped open. He held his breath, listening. Then, a voice, a woman's voice, low, trembling. "Please, help me." Michael froze. His mind flashed back to the old man's warning, "Don't leave your room after midnight." The voice came again, closer now, desperate. "Please, he's coming for me." His heart pounded. He wanted to stay still to obey the warning, but curiosity clawed at him, and fear of ignoring someone in real danger pushed harder. Against his better judgment, Michael climbed out of bed and turned the brass key slowly in the lock. The door creaked open an inch. The hallway was empty. No woman, no footsteps. But the carpet outside his door was soaked, as though someone had stood there dripping wet. A faint trail of damp footprints stretched away into the darkness. Michael stepped back, his chest tight. And then, at the far end of the hall, he saw it. A figure, tall, shadowy, wrong, taller than any man he'd ever seen, standing perfectly still, watching him. The lights above flickered once, twice. Then, with a sharp pop, the entire hallway went black. Michael slammed the door shut, his breath ragged, his heart racing. He shoved the chair under the knob and pressed his back against the wall. He didn't move for the rest of the night. Sleep never came again until morning.
The first rays of sunlight crept through the dusty curtains of room 6. Michael hadn't slept. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the door, replaying the night over and over. The footsteps, the woman's voice, the shadow. Finally, he forced himself up, grabbed his bag, and stepped back into the hallway. The carpet was dry now, as if it had never been wet. The lights that had gone out last night buzzed faintly overhead, glowing steady again, as though nothing had happened at all. Michael made his way back to the lobby. The glass door creaked open, but the room beyond was different. Silent, empty. The desk where the pale old man had sat was abandoned. The logbook that had been open when Michael checked in was gone. Dust coated the countertop thick enough to write in, as if no one had touched it in years. A cobweb stretched from the desk bell to the wall, undisturbed. Michael's mouth went dry. "Hello," he called out, his voice echoing in the stillness. But there was no reply. Uneasy, he left the motel and pulled back onto the road. A few miles later, he spotted a gas station. Relieved, he pulled in and asked the attendant, a middle-aged man in a baseball cap, if he knew anything about the Moonlight Motel. The attendant froze, his face drained of color. "What motel?" he asked cautiously. "The one down the road," Michael said. "Moonlight Motel. I stayed there last night, room 6. The man's eyes widened in disbelief. He set down the fuel nozzle he was holding. His voice dropped to a whisper. "That place burned down in 1973. Michael stared at him. "What are you talking about? I was just there." The man shook his head, firm now. "No, son. That motel has been gone for over 40 years. 13 people died in that fire, most of them in room 6. Michael felt his stomach twist. A cold sweat broke out along the back of his neck. He wanted to laugh, to argue, to call it a cruel joke. But the man's expression didn't waver. He was dead serious. Desperate to prove him wrong, Michael drove back toward the motel. The desert stretched out around him, silent, endless. But when he reached the spot, his heart nearly stopped. There was no motel, no cracked paint, no rusted cars, no buzzing neon sign, only sand, weeds and the charred skeleton of a foundation, barely visible beneath the shifting desert earth. Michael parked the car and stepped out, his legs trembling. The wind blew across the ruins, carrying with it the faint smell of ash, a scent that shouldn't have lingered after 40 years. He stood there, staring in disbelief, telling himself he had to be in the wrong place. He had to be. And then, he saw it. Half buried in the blackened dirt, glinting faintly in the morning light, was a brass key. The same brass key the old man had given him the night before. Its long tarnished fob was charred around the edges, but the number was still clear. Room 6. Michael staggered back, his pulse hammering in his ears. He didn't pick it up. He couldn't. Instead, he stumbled back to his car, started the engine, and drove away, leaving the key, the ashes, and the truth behind. But deep down, he knew the truth would never leave him. Years passed. Michael told himself it hadn't been real. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was his mind playing tricks on him. Maybe it was a hallucination brought on by too many hours on the road. He wanted to believe that. He needed to believe that. Because the alternative, that the motel had been real, was too terrifying to accept. For a long time he didn't talk about it. He buried the memory, convincing himself that one day it would fade. But it never did. Every time he closed his eyes, he still saw the brass key. He still smelled the smoke. He still heard the woman's voice whispering outside his door. By 2019, Michael was 31. Life had moved on. He had a new job, new friends, a steady routine. But one summer, when a close friend suggested a road trip west, Michael agreed, against his better judgment. They followed the same stretch of Route 66. The desert looked the same. The silence felt the same. The shadows stretched across the highway just as they had before. As they passed mile marker after mile marker, Michael felt his chest tighten. He told himself it was silly, irrational. The motel wasn't real. It couldn't be. But then, without warning, his friend slowed the car. "Hey, look," his friend said casually, pointing through the windshield. "A motel. Should we stop?" Michael's heart sank. His hands trembled. He forced himself to look, and there it was. Through the haze of heat and fog, a neon sign flickered faintly in the distance. Moonlight Motel, Vacancy. The letters buzzed and sputtered exactly as he remembered. The red glow pulsed against the mist. The sign seemed alive, breathing. Michael's blood ran cold. His friend's voice broke through the silence. "Looks cheap. We could crash there for the night. What do you think?" Michael didn't answer. He couldn't. His throat had closed, his voice trapped. He stared at the sign, unable to look away. It hadn't been a dream. It hadn't been a trick of exhaustion. The motel hadn't vanished at all. It had waited for him to come back. Michael snapped out of his daze just long enough to shout, "Keep driving." His friend laughed, confused, but the terror in Michael's voice left no room for argument. The car accelerated, pulling them away from the glow. Still, as the miles stretched on, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that the neon light still burned behind them, that it would always burn, waiting for the next traveler desperate enough to stop. Because the Moonlight Motel wasn't just a ruin, it wasn't just a ghost, it was a trap. A place outside of time, a predator disguised as shelter, and it was still out there waiting for you. Thank you for listening to Hunt, Nightmare Echoes. You ever find yourself driving late at night on a lonely American highway, and you see a flickering neon sign promising cheap rooms and safety? Remember Michael's story. Because not every motel is what it seems. Some are traps, some are graves, and some never let you leave. So the next time the darkness feels too heavy and the road feels endless, resist the temptation, keep driving, and if you can't, pray the room you choose isn't. Number 6. This has been Hunt, nightmare echoes.
If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more chilling tales and comment below. Have you ever traveled alone on a dark highway at night? We'd love to hear your story. Until next time, sleep well.